In this video, I'll go through how to set up a user and how the permissions work within Odoo, the user permissions and the user groups and menu accesses. So let's get started. So for creating a new user, I can get into settings. Under users and company, we go into users. And here we click on create to create a new user. And let's say, for example, I'll just create a new user called Raju. And the email address is raju@v2.co.nz. Right, now going forward, I can now specify if I've got multiple companies, which are the companies. By default, the company that I'm in gets selected. But if Raju has got permission for other companies, then you can come in here and specify which are the other companies that Raju can log on to, right? And you can also specify what is the default company when Raju logs on. Because Raju is an internal user, that means they will be using apps that, like any other Odoo user be, the user type will be selected as an internal user. Now, as we scroll down in here, you will see the various apps that we have installed, and for each one of those apps, what the security is. So let's assume Raju is an inventory user only. So we can probably remove the security for majority of the apps so that it looks simple, right? And I'll just set them up as a user within inventory. Yeah. And because they are inventory user, they'll become a quality user. I'll just set them up as a purchase user, nothing else in here. Right, so I've set up a user in here. Few other things that I can do in here while I'm setting the users. Under preferences, I can specify the email signature in here. So that's one thing. Again, if Raju is always going to be, as a user, going to go into inventory, and when they log on, instead of showing them the main window, take them to the inventory operations window, then we can do that. And also if the user is going to be creating any sales orders, what is the default warehouse to be used for them when that user is creating the sales order. So let me get started off with a simple option in here with this user. I'll just save this, and I want to give this user a password. So I can either send an invitation in here, and that will send a email to the user with the link to reset their password. That's option one. If I did want to reset some existing user's password, or if I want to give this user a new password, under the action, I can click on change password and I can type in the new password in here. So I'll just go with the password and go change password. Right, now I've set up a user, and let us just log in as that particular user and see how it looks. So I'll just go into a new different browser in here. Just with me. I will go into a Brave browser. So just go into a different browser in here and go into that particular, and I'll just go in here as a new private window. Right. And I'm going into my demo database. That's what I'm using. And the username was raju@nz, and the password was the one I had set up. Right. So what we can see, that the users can see certain common options in here in terms of the discuss, knowledge, contacts kind of thing in here. The documents app, I have probably not taken off the documents. Yeah, I've not taken out everything off, so hence they are able to see certain more than what I wanted. Let me just update that, save that, and just refresh. So now the user will only see purchase, inventory, and few other options for which I have given them the rights for. Okay, so if I go into inventory, because this is not an administrator, they're only a user, the options that they see on the top are lesser. So if I were a administrator within the inventory app, if I go back into my inventory app, sorry, here it is. You see, I have access as an administrator to things like configuration, reporting, products, and few other things. Whereas when I look at it from a user that I have currently created, they only have very few options in here. Right? Now, even if they go into products, for example, you'll see the create button is missing, and if I go into the products in here, of course because I've got the manufacturing app installed, because the bill of materials also going through the products, I need to give them the bill of material, right? So I have to make Raju a user, at least a user in manufacturing. So I'll just go and quickly do that change. So I'll just put them as a user in manufacturing. Right. Now that I have done that, if I go into a particular product, I can see that there is no editing capability. I'm a user who's got a ability to only review things but not do any changes, right? So this is how to set up a particular user and based upon the rights that we have given them. If you scroll down, there are a few other additional rights that we can kind of create and or allocate in here. So if we want them to be able to manage lot and serial numbers, then we can give them, so that then they'll have the ability to create new lots or edit the existing lots in here. So that there are, most of these descriptions are pretty self-explanatory, so I'll not go through each one of them, but yes, just to give you an idea that there are certain other things that are existing when you scroll down at the bottom, right? Now, in most cases, what happens is this two-level access of user is not sufficient. So I have got an inventory user and I have an administrator. So what most common thing that comes to me is, hey, I want to be able to create one more user group in here who will be not a full administrator. They will not have access to be able to do anything within the configuration settings, but that particular user group should have access to be able to create new products, because just because you're creating a new product doesn't mean I have to give them administrator rights. So how do we go about setting a new user group in here? So to be able to do any changes to the settings of the user group, we need to be able to click on general settings, scroll down, and there is an activate the developer mode option. So if you click on that, what you will notice is, if you then go back into settings, there are more options available in here. So as an example, if I now go into user as a group, users, I can see groups as well. So if I go into groups and if I just look for inventory, right, at this stage I can see that under the inventory I've got an inventory administrator and I've got a user. So let us now just dive into the groups to see how they are being set up and what they have. So if I go into let's say inventory user, I can see who are the users who belong to that particular group. What is the group this user has inherited? If you recollect, it came up with a message saying that the moment you make somebody a user within the inventory user, they get automatic rights to the quality user. That is because of the inheritance in here. Then under the menu options, what are the menu options they have access to? So if you had noticed, the menu option within the user that I had created was lesser, purely because the access that I've given to the menus in here are lesser. Then again, going to access rights into a product template or product, they only have read access. They have no write create access in here under the product, and hence they are not able to do anything. So now there are record rules. I'll come to record rules at a later stage in here. But these are the user security settings within a user group. So now I need to be able to create a new user group under inventory. Let's hypothetically call it super user. The super user is going to have more rights than a user, but less rights than an administrator. So I can click on create in here, and which application it is. We are talking about the inventory application, right? And this I'll call it super user. Right. The super user in here, if I just come in here and say, for example, under the access rights, I'll go in here and say that under the products, I will give them read access, write access, and create access, but no delete access for the time being, right? So this is the additional thing I wanted. But what I want the super user to do is, I want the super user to inherit the existing user, inventory user, right? So that it has got all the rights of an inventory user plus this access on top of what the inventory user has got. So if I go save this in here, right? So I've created a user group in here. Now this, if I just do this, this is sufficient for the purposes of me adding the users in here and giving them rights, but it still breaks something. I'll show you what it breaks. So if I go into users, and if I go into Raju as a user, and if I look for inventory, so you see the inventory now does not have a drop down list like every other app in here. Purchases, for example, I've got a drop down list to see user administrator. In here now it puts in as a tick to say whether the user is an administrator, which is not ideal because we want to have uniformity. If one module has got the drop down list, I want all the modules to have a drop down list, so that's easier to maintain that. So why is that this has broken this? The reason this has broken this is because now I have got a case wherein I have got two user groups inheriting the same user. So the hierarchy is not being maintained. So to fix it, I have to go into inventory administrator and tell the inventory administrator does not inherit the inventory user, but rather inherits the super user. Make sense? So the user is inheriting the Intel user, which is the basic user. Then the super user is inheriting all the rights of the user plus additional things, and the administrator is going to be having everything that a super user has got plus additional things. So now that I've done that, if I come into here and refresh this and go Control F and look for the inventory in here, see now I have got a user rights in here. So I can say that Raju in here is now an inventory user. I can make Raju a super user, for example. Right, now that I've made Raju a super user, if I just go into Raju's login and refresh this, I can see the create button has appeared, and if I go into a particular product, I will have as that particular user as Raju. The user has now got the ability to edit stuff within the inventory. Yeah, hope that makes sense as to how to set up this option, right? Now again, if say for example, if I go into the normal inventory in here, under the operations, I've got few more things. I've got the landed cost and transfers and few things, right? Whereas if I say, for example, if I go into Raju's login in here, under operations, I only see scrap and transfers and inventory adjustment. The other common request that comes through is, hey, how do I give certain users access to only the landed cost? So let's hypothetically say I wanted to give access to landed cost for the super user group. How do I do that? So if I go back into my user groups, settings, groups, look for the inventory group, super user. Under here, under menus, I can now come into here and give them additional rights to have landed cost. Right? So if I go save this, and if I go into the other login I have created and refresh it, okay. So I have saved this. Yes, I have saved this. Inventory operations, landed cost. Control F5 is what I need to do, I think. Inventory adjustments. Probably just need to do a log off and log back in. I'll just do that. Menu options, let me just check the menu. So if I wanted to go any bit more details into why that menu is not being appearing, so if I go into options in here, there is an option in here to see that menu items. So I can go into landed cost in here, and I can specify which user groups have got access to this. So I can see that inventory super user has got access to the landed cost and any sub menus out of it. So this is coming under inventory operations. So let me go back into here. Just double check. It is under inventory, and under inherit is that. menus, this has got additional options in here. And views, I've not given anything additional. Products, I can see that I can create them. Record rules haven't come through in here as yet, so which should mean that I should be able to see the inventory option. What am I missing? So this is a user group. Let me just check some other things against that particular user group. Yep, so I have checked that that is a super user. That is fine. And under users and groups, and just check there's only one landed cost option in here. No, there is only one. So yes, I know what I'm missing. While I've given them access to the menu, I have not given them access to the landed cost objects. So that is why it's not appearing in here. So I do need to come into here and give them options, because just giving them options to be able to access it, whether if I give them a menu access, but behind each menu is an object, right, as to which table it stores information into. So in that particular case, I have to give them security rights to say what are the things they can do in that particular object. So if I go in here, if I've given that particular option object rights now, and if I go and refresh it, so I've got the landed cost now in here. That is what I was missing. So now the user can come in here, create a new landed cost, and if they come into here, I can see that they've got no rights for the landed cost lines. And the reason for that is, again, under landed cost there is multiple lines. So if I go in here, landed cost line, you see in here stock landed cost line, and I have to give them the access. And again, I can, if I only wanted to give certain users read access, I have the ability to do that as well. So that's not a problem. So now if I come back into here and refresh this, so the user now I have created can now process the landed cost of any inbound receipt as an example, right? Hope that makes sense in terms of how the security groups come into picture and how the menu rights actually work as well. So just to recap in here under technical, if I go into menu items, this will list all the menus that are available within the Odoo system. I can search for the menu by its name, right? And I can put it under the landed cost. Now, while I'm in the menu, there is one other thing that that has been quite commonly asked. Majority of the landed cost is not actually processed by the inventory user. It is usually processed by either the accounts payable or the supply chain staff. So they say, hey, can I have this option not under the inventory, because it gets confusing for the user to go into inventory when they're not an inventory user. Can I have this option under purchase orders, for example, right? So that's a very common thing that has been asked by me. So what we can do in that particular case is I can come into the menu options in here, because now what I want to be able to do is, if I go into purchase orders, for example, under purchase orders, under here somewhere under, I want an option called landed cost, so that the purchase user can do the whole job in one go rather than switching modules. So what we can do in here is, under this menu, I can go action, duplicate this. So I've got this, I'll call this also landed costs in here, except the parent menu in here is not going to be this. I'll say the parent menu is going to be under purchases reporting or purchase orders, or I can search for more, but just to, as an example for the time being, I'll just put it in purchase just to show you what it does. And I can see the inventory super user has got access to it, right? So if I do this in here, if I go into my purchase and refresh, so I can see the landed cost is in here. So I can come into here and create it. Now, if I wanted it under orders in there, so I can come into the same menu option. I can again change the parent to be under purchase orders. So save that and go into here and refresh it. So that menu disappears from there and it will come into here as well. Hope that makes sense as to how it functions. Now again, because I had given the same rights to the user as in the Raju user had created, if I go back into here, and similarly if I go into purchases, I'm expecting to see the landed cost in here. I just need to do a control F5 to do a hard refresh in here, so that user can also see the landed cost under the purchase orders. Yeah. So this is how you can duplicate menu, put it in multiple places if you wanted to, for ease of access. The other thing that will be of interest to you is under technical is also something called models. Now these are areas wherein you can go in, view, but typically don't change much in here, because this is a very dangerous area. If you come and click on delete in any one of these areas, if you have the rights for it, there is a good chance you could screw up the system. Right. So what do I mean by that? So if I go into landed cost tables in here, so stock.landed.cost, I can go into that particular object, and I can now within that particular object see who are the users who have got access to it, which are the user groups that have got access to it. And within that user group, I can still click on the user group, and I can drill down to the user group to see who are the users who have got access to it. So if I wanted to have it just a look to see, for example, there's one common question that's been asked for me. Hey, I want to know all the list of users who can create products. So I can come into here, look at product as an example, as a product variant maybe, for example, and I can go into access right and see the list of user groups, and I can see who are the user groups which have got create access in here. Then I do have the ability to now drill down into the group and see which are the users who have got the access. Because let's say, for example, if somebody is just a purchase user, they do not have access to create a product, so I don't need to include them in here. But within this, I can now say these are the user groups, and I can specify who are the users in that particular group by drilling down. I will know who are the users who have got access to create a particular product. So that's the options in terms of looking at of the object access and saying who has got rights to do what. Right. The final thing I wanted to cover in here was with regards to record rules. A common thing that has been asked again for me is when you look into the inventory app. If I've got multiple warehouses, it shows me all the operation types in here, right? So if I group it by warehouses, I have got a Wellington warehouse and a supply chain solutions warehouse, for example. And the person who is responsible for my Wellington warehouse is different to the person who is responsible for my supply chain solutions warehouse. So I want my Wellington warehouse person, i.e. the Raju as the user who is the Wellington warehouse person, to be only able to see the Wellington warehouse. No, they should not be able to see anything in the supply chain warehouse. How do I kind of achieve that if I wanted to put in certain rules for that? So that is where the record rules come into picture. So the first record rule that I will do is, if I go as an example, before I start, let me show you something in here. So if I'm the inventory user, right, I can see in here, I can group by warehouse because I'm the new user had created. I can see both Wellington warehouse and the supply chain warehouse, right? So I want this user to be restricted so that they can only do operations on the Wellington warehouse and nothing in the supply chain warehouse, right? So if I now go back into my settings and into the technical, if I scroll down there is something called record rules, right? So I'll go in here, create a new record rule, okay? And I will say access to only Wellington warehouse, right? Cool. From a models perspective, which model are we dealing with? We are dealing with the warehouse model. And in here, I can specify what is a filter, as in I can specify in here a formula which will look something similar to this, to say that ID is equal to X, and that is what the record filter will be. Now, how do I find out what that X is? What is the number that I put in here? To be able to find that, what I will do is, if I open a new tab, if I go into inventory, configuration, warehouses, there are two warehouses. And if I look at Wellington warehouse, on the top, it will show me what the ID is. And if I go to the next record in here, it will show me the ID for this record is 5, and the Wellington warehouse ID, the record is ID is 1. So now I can go in here and say that this in here, the ID is equal to 1. And now I can also specify which is the user group that this is going to be applicable to. So I'll say that this is applicable to, say for example, I'll want to create a new group called Wellington warehouse users and add certain users in there. So what I will then do is I'll go into groups in here. I'll create a new group called, or the application should be left blank in this case, sorry about that. Right, then I can come in and add that user Raju to this. Right, I've done that particular thing, and that's set up. Right, now I can come into my menu options in here. I can say in here this is applicable for Wellington. Now that I've put this rule, how does it look? Let us see. This doesn't necessarily solve the problem, but just to give you an idea as to what, there's one step of it. I have got more steps, but let's go into the Raju users login, and I'll go refresh. And if I come into here and group by warehouse, I still see two different warehouses. And the problem is, if I now go into any one of the supply chain warehouses, it will not give me access. I can't go in there. So in terms of Wellington warehouse, yes, because he's got access to the Wellington warehouse, so Raju can go in there. This kind of achieves the goal, but there is also a thing that I need to do is clean this up so that the Wellington warehouse desktop looks cleaner, so they don't go clicking in it and getting errors on it. And this the card that you see in here is effectively operation type. So what I can also do is I can create a rule on operation type as well. So how do I do that? If I go create in here, and I'll say this is and the model in here is going to be type. I think it's picking type. Yep, picking type it is. And then I can come into here and put my formula. So in here, the warehouse ID is equal to so when you're putting a filter, we are seeing few things in here, which field it is in there, and what is the condition that it needs to match that equal to, and what is the value it needs to match, right? Some users will ask me, hey, how did you get that field is equal to warehouse ID? How did you know that that is warehouse ID? How did I know that? So if I go into inventory under configurations and operation types in here, and if I pick up any of the operation type, and if I hover over this particular field, because that is where I want the filter to be, it tells me, hey, that is the building, that is the warehouse ID in there. That is a field that needs to be filtered on. So that's exactly what I've done in here is warehouse underscore ID was a field name, and have put in the filter in here, and that needs to be within square brackets, within round brackets. So now that I've said this, again, from which group is it applicable? If you don't specify a group, keep in mind it will be applicable for everybody. So make sure that when you're creating a record rule, always put in a group ID. Right. Now if I do that and come over here and refresh that, if I group by warehouse in here, I only see one warehouse, that is the Wellington warehouse, right? The other common thing that has been asked for me is, under the inventory, again, mostly under inventory, I'm using inventory as an example, but you can expand this to other modules as well. Under the inventory, under configurations, we have products. Sorry, not configuration, under products, we have products. I can group the products by product category, and I've got a few categories in here. And one of the requests has been that certain users, say for example, the Wellington users should not be able to see the POS category, or should only be able to see the POS category kind of thing. So if we need to put restrictions against a product category, the reason I'm using this example is so far all the record rules have created having a simple rule wherein there's the warehouse ID is equal to X, that is just one field. In this case, I want to specify that they will have access to so and so categories, the specific categories that we have. So if I go into configuration into product categories, I've got so many categories in here. So let's say, for example, if I wanted to see certain categories as consumable, so the category ID in here is 9 as an example. And if I go back into the next one, some other categories, let me just see. the categories. Might be easier to say office furniture. So office furniture ID is 8. So I want to give a user access to only 2 product categories, that is 8 and 9. How do I go about doing that? So now I can go back into my settings. I've got the record rules in here. So I can directly go into record rules. I can click on create in here, and I want to put in to say that filter products by category, right? And to which model it is applicable. It will be applicable on the product template, because product template is the one that has got the category in it. So if I why is it not showing me everything? Yep, that is, it's product. Okay, right. Now the rule again, before I go any further, I'll apply this to only Wellington users. Right. Now I need to put the rule in here. How do I put the rule? Right. So as always, the rule starts with a square bracket. Right. Now, because there are 2 conditions in here. So as an example, if I say in here, the category say TG underscore ID, and that needs to be within a single quote. Right, and is equal to, that needs to be within a single quote, and we said 2 IDs, 8 and 9, so I've got putting 8 as an example, right, and close the square bracket. So what I've done with this is I've given that particular user access to only one category, right? If I go save in here, and if I go into the user Raju login under products and products, nothing much is, if I go and look at archive products, I might see anything, but there's no product in that particular category. So that then filters me to only look at that category, product category, right? But if I wanted to give multiple of this, multiple options, how do I do that? So if you're doing multiple options, the first thing you need to specify is a condition, right? So you need to put a, if it's a or, you need to put a pipe condition, pipe as a symbol. So that is the shift and the key above the enter in my keyboard. So it's pipe in there, a comma, and then I can add the second condition in here. So I can just duplicate this, and I can say category ID is equal to 9. Okay, and if there is a third category, I have to add one more pipe again, and then the filter, the actual filter that I need in here, right? So now that I've done that, if I save this, and if I then go to the product, if I go into the other users login in here, and if I go in here refresh, again nothing. So I'll just do one thing. I'll create 2 products just for the sake of it, to see how it becomes visible in those 2 categories. Products, I'm just logging in here, create. And this I thought, well, I'll put into furniture just so that it becomes visible, and also go create product B. And this one I thought I had consumables in here, right? I've now created 2 products within those 2 categories. So now if I come in here and refresh this, if all things being even, I should be able to see those 2 products in here. The rest of the products, even though there are multiple products in my system, the user should not be able to see it. So this is how I can specify the record rules filter for restricting users to certain records. One other thing that I wanted to mention before I close off is, if I go back, or 2 other things should I say, under settings, when I go into users, under the user Raju, under account security tab, I do have the ability to activate 2-factor authentication. So when you do this, it will automatically send an email to the user. There are multiple options available in terms of 2-factor authentication. You can use Microsoft authentication, Google authentication, any of those sorts of things. So just tick this on and it will send an email. And again, for preferences, just to recap, I can specify the home action in here as to what the home action should be. Say for example, if I put the home action as inventory in here for this particular user, Raju, and just to show you a demo, I'll come here, log off, and just log back in. said, and put the password. And now it is, I've selected inventory adjustments, but it's taken me to the inventory adjustments. You get the idea, not to the main screen. So that's what this will do, because again, the inventory adjustments is also called inventory under the inventory menu option. So that's the other thing. One other common question that I get asked is, how do I set up the password restrictions, or the password setup restrictions in terms of using special characters, not special characters, length, any of those sorts of things. If you want to do that, there is a free app within the Odoo App Store. It is called the Password Strength, and if we install that app, it will come up with the options in here to say restrict user password, should have 8 characters, should have at least one number, any of these sorts of things that you need to do. I have not installed this app. Odoo does not install this by default, but if required, you have the ability to be able to do this. Cool. That's all I wanted to show in this video. If any questions, majority of people who are watching this know how to get to me. Thank you. Bye.